Thank you for tuning in to Movie Geeks United. Stacy Keach has long been one of our finest actors. From the Shakespearean characters he's brought to life on the stage, to TV roles like the indelible Mike Hammer and the current sitcom Man with a Plan, to the staggering film work he's provided under the direction of giants like John Huston and Robert Altman. We discuss all of this, including his films End of the Road, Fat City, The New Centurions, The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, and Road Games. This interview was conducted for our Movie Geek Yearbook series. Visit moviegeekyearbook.com for more details.
I got over my fear of the camera a little bit, but it didn't last long. I was very kind of camera shy, being a stage actor in the beginning of my career. And it wasn't until I did End of the Road and Gordon Willis, a great cameraman, took me aside and said, you need to treat the camera as a person. Come over here and I want you to meet Mitch. He called him with the Mitchell camera. And, and he started talking to the camera. And he said, and come over here, I want you to meet Ari. This is the Aeroflex, the smaller camera. And he carried on the conversation. He said, Ari, this is Stacy Keach, and he's a little nervous in front of you, but you'll make him feel comfortable, I'm sure. And every day I would come in on the set, and I would start having a little conversation with the camera. People thought I was crazy. I mean, the crew, some of the crew, they knew that what was going on because they knew Gordon. But it actually it allowed me to overcome my fear of working in front of a camera.
When it comes to working in front of a camera, I'm wondering how aware you are of the camera placement. Is this a medium shot, a close-up, so you can modulate your performance? Do you concern yourself with that technical side of it?
I've gone through that because I've also directed, and I've gone through that process, but ultimately it doesn't mean a damn thing. What really is important is just getting to the truth of the moment, whether it's a close-up or a medium shot or a master. It's getting to the truth of the moment and expressing that. The old adage of save it for the close-up, I think it still works. If you've got a very emotional scene and you're in a medium shot and you're doing off camera for the other actor, you don't have to really let all, don't let it loose. It's good to hold back a little bit. But I think other than that, I would say that, again, the adage of tell the truth no matter what size the lens is.
Yeah. This might seem like an odd question, but, with your extensive stage and screen work, I'm curious, actors talk about reaching kind of like a moment of transcendence, where it feels like they've hit a moment that feels so truthful and present, immediate to them, that they almost feel like they're levitating. Everything else kind of disappears around them. Yeah. And I would think that the stage would be more conducive to creating those moments. But have you ever experienced that in film?
Yes, I have. But I think for those actors who have expressed that, I think that the theater definitely provides you with more opportunities to reach those levels of transcendence because of the nature of the roles, particularly if you're a classical actor, as I am, and you do Shakespeare, you do these big, enormous roles that if you don't transcend at some point, then obviously, the audience is going to descend. They're not going to like it. Yeah. There are moments in film, though, that I'm just, in my career, I did a movie called The Ninth Configuration, which was also titled Twinkle, Twinkle, Killer Kane, with William Peter Blatty directing, producing, and writing. And in that movie, I did have moments of transcendence, particularly there was a bar scene where the character that I played, Killer Kane, comes off the floor in a bar fight and just wreaks havoc on the place, and the enemy is fighting. And I did experience a kind of transcendent moment there.
Yeah. This is probably the most difficult question I'm going to ask in this interview. How would you describe End of the Road?
Well, it's hard to do that in a word, that's for sure. But End of the Road was it was a miscalculated film and way ahead of its time. John Barth wrote something that was very intense, and Terry Southern transformed it into a movie script that Aram Avakian, the director, embraced, but he wanted to do something very sort of avant-garde, and he wanted to use multiple images in the scenes with James Earl Jones as the psychiatrist, Jacob Horner. Those scenes and the backdrops of those scenes was really way ahead of its time. We thought at the time that the film was going to be controversial, but we didn't have any idea that it was going to be rated X by virtue of the fact that the abortion scene was too much for people to take, and people left the theaters, getting sick to their stomachs. It was very difficult to take. But as an actor, it was a wonderful experience. I loved working with James Earl Jones and Harris Yulin and Dorothy Tristan and other actors in the cast. It was my first major serious role. I had just done The Traveling Executioner, which was sort of a romantic Burt Lancaster type of character that I loved, Jonas Candide. But it was lighter. It wasn't serious. End of the Road was a literary masterpiece, and I don't know that people feel comfortable saying that it translated well to the screen. I don't know that it did, but I loved it. I loved doing the movie. I really enjoyed it.
So what was it about End of the Road? What spoke to you? What was true about that movie to the times that you were living in?
Well, I think the inability to confront your environment, what was going on around you, going into a catatonic state, almost being numb to the events of the world, what was going on around you. I think that was very much a part of of that era, and funnily enough, I think we've returned to that era once again.
Yeah. Let me ask you about it. In terms of the outside of the box thinking of End of the Road, it's also a good matchup with something like Brewster McCloud, in which you also appeared, because there were these little gems of oddities, like little movies that it's just a beautiful time for filmmaking.
Eccentricity was a very respectable thing in those days. Unpredictability, quirkiness. I think Robert Altman certainly, as a director, personified those things. And he as a director was wonderful to work with, in the sense that he really depended on his actors to provide the material for the script. We improvised almost every scene based on a very concrete and very objective scenario that Bob Altman would explain the situation, and then he would say, just get in there and improvise, And sometimes it was very intimidating, because if you couldn't come up with something, you were kind of stuck. But it was ultimately exhilarating.
Yeah. Altman is one of my all-time favorite directors, and I always think the filmmakers that I wish were still making films today, today, are Altman and Hal Ashby. I wish the two of them were still making.
Hal Ashby. Oh, I loved Hal Ashby. I never got a chance to work with him, but we spent a lot of time together because there was a period of time in my life when I, for about 2 seconds, was going to play McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Mm.
Yeah. When Hal Ashby had been given the assignment to write the script and to help Ken Kesey write. No, Ken Kesey to oversee the writing of the script. And Ken Kesey took the play and just completely he expanded it in 14 many different directions, and the studio got very upset. And Hal Ashby loved it, so they fired Hal Ashby, and my chances of ever playing that part were diminished and gone, evaporated.
I read your beautiful autobiography, and I enjoyed it immensely. And there was something you wrote about another kind of missed opportunity that predated Brewster McCloud, which was MASH. Your first opportunity with Altman couldn't come with MASH.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. Oh, you know that story then? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it was one anti-war film too many so early in your career.
I don't know about that. Well, but it was, the opportunity to play Buffalo Bill was before me. So I didn't, after my experience on Catch-22, where I was on that movie for 3 days, and then Mike Nichols said, "Well, finally you're not right for the part," and that did put a wedge in my desire to be in any more war movies. So when Bob Altman called me and said it's another war movie, I said, "Oh no, I'm going to go play Buffalo Bill."
One of the great collaborations early on in your career was, of course, with John Huston. And Robert Forster passed just the other day, so I went and re-listened to my conversation with him, and he said that the best advice he ever received was from Huston on how to act in front of the camera. He made him look through the camera lens and said, "See those frame lines there?" He said, "Look in the center and ask yourself what needs to be there." So I'm wondering, what did you glean from being in his presence?
Oh my goodness, he was larger than life, and he was like a great coach and a great father figure in many ways, a great teacher. With me, he said, "Stacy, I only have two directions, a little more and a little less." And that was it. I mean, he said the actor has to come in with the goods. The actor has to provide the material, the emotion, the direction of the character in the scene. And he said, "There's nothing I can do about it. I'm on the outside." And I had the great pleasure of acting with him in a terrible film called it had many titles. The Greatest Battle, I think, was the last title. Film with Henry Fonda, John Huston, myself, Samantha Eggar, Helmut Berger, and John was playing an Irish industrialist. Henry Fonda was playing an American general, and I was playing a German Nazi, sort of a good Nazi, in love with Samantha Eggar, an Austrian actress. And the opening scene, we're all sitting around a table discussing why Adolf Hitler declined to shake hands with Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics, 38. And the director was an Italian, and he spoke not a word of English. And I was concerned about my accent. I didn't, and I'd worked with John as a director on 2 films, Fat City and Judge Roy Bean, and here I am acting with him, and I'm asking him at the dinner table, John, how's my accent? Is it too much? He said, oh, no, don't talk to me about, I'm not giving you any directions. I'm acting here too, I'm not asking you about my Irish accent. So I mean, it was, what an experience. He was one of the great influences in my life, and I miss him every day.
Yeah. Fat City is such a remarkable film, but I'm curious what it was like to exist in the tone of that film for as long as it took to shoot it. I'm sure
I loved it. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Well, I enjoyed it because I was in the best shape of my life during that period because I had to train every day, and I was working with Jose Torres, who was a light heavyweight contender. He was a great, great guy, and he taught me a lot, and I learned. I felt was in the best physical shape of my during that film, and of course working with wonderful actors like Jeff Bridges and Susan Terrell, and it was.
Oh, your scenes with Susan Terrell. You have a couple of just two-hander scenes in there that are just flawless.
Oh yeah, I love working. And Conrad Hall shot that film and got in trouble with Ray Stark because Ray Stark thought the scenes in the bar were too dark. Wanted to reshoot them, and Connie said, "No, they've got to be dark like that." So when they walk outside, that white light hits you. It's like that feeling you get when you are in a dark space and you come out into the glaring sun. He really wanted it, and John defended it and supported him, and those scenes are just the way they were shot.
When you're tackling a character like Tully in Fat City,
yeah,
I'm wondering if, I know you do your preparation, and I know you have to absorb that, and then kind of let it go and feel free to create in the moment.
Yes.
But is there usually a word or a single idea that you can stumble upon that unlocks a character like Tully for you?
I don't know about a single word. I know that one of my greatest disappointments with Fat City was the fact that we shot scenes that were very much a part of the fabric of that story, with Leonard Gardner's story. For example, when Tully was on top, when he was a king, when he was the champ, when he was, and his wife at the time. We shot a wonderful scene where he was receiving the kudos, and he was invited ringside to take a bow in front of the crowd. It's a great scene. And also at the end of the movie, the descent into oblivion was not just coming back to his apartment and finding the Oma, Susan Terrell, living with Curtis Coates, a wonderful black middleweight. He then, in scenes we shot, went into an alleyway and almost got knifed, ended up sleeping in an incinerator. And all of those scenes were cut. And John was really upset. And Ray said, well, the studio wanted to do it, at Columbia. That Columbia wanted to, it was too depressing. It was too much of a downer. I said, well, good Lord, this is a downer. I mean, the thing is, if you don't really hit bottom, the feeling gets abbreviated. The feelings of compassion and empathy for these characters was not as great as it could have been had those scenes been maintained. I think that's my feeling, and John's feeling.
No, I think so. I think so too. It's surprising to me how the great John Huston, that the studio would dare cut anything that he wanted left in.
I know, it was a shocker. Well, I can tell you a funny story. Well, ironic story. we're at the Cannes Film Festival. I'm with John Huston having dinner, and Stanley Schneiderman, I'm just trying to remember the name of who was running Columbia at the time. Anyway, whoever it was, came over to me, and John's sitting on my left, but he came to my right ear, and he said, Stacy, I want to just tell you how wonderful you are. We have great hopes and expectations for the film. We just think you're great, and it's going to be a wonderful day. I said, well, much of the credit goes to Mr. Huston, and he said, "Oh no, we're not talking about Fat City." I said, "What?" And we're talking about the new Centurions, which happened to be released at the same time as Fat City. Mm. And thank God John didn't hear it. I mean, it was just, but I mean, well, it's our business. It's a cruel business. It's cruel. It's wonderful and exhilarating, but it can also be brutal.
Fat City's an interesting movie also, and it has in common something with a few movies during that period where it feels like the characters, I always kind of try to imagine how they lived on beyond the life of the movie. Mm. And I'm wondering if you ever thought about what would become of someone like Tully. I mean, would he overcome his self-defeating obstacles? Would he ever be able to do that?
No, I don't think so. No, I think the bitterness was pretty much there. It was, he hurt too much, I think. No, I don't think he would have ever found his way back into the spotlight.
Yeah.
No,
but it's a great character study. Oh. That film. But it's interesting that you say that they said that Fat City was such a downer because Huston does a 180 and he does this kind of rambunctious, tall-tale movie with The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, and he gives you this one-scene character that is just. He almost looks like a kabuki character.
Yeah. Oh, Bad Bob. I'm one of my faves. Yeah. I still remember the morning we shot that. The ride into town. I wanted, because John said, I wanted to be an albino. He's got to be an albino. And so I wanted to do everything albinos do. I did all this research. They had red eyes. So I had these red contact lenses made. Well, we're riding into town at dawn, and the wind is up, and the sand and the dust is blowing like hell. I mean, I can't see, and my eyes are red without contact lenses. I don't need the contact lenses. And when we got into the body of the shooting, in the main part of the shooting, Paul Newman, God love him, came over and he said, Stacy, he said, I'm very concerned about this scene. I said, why? He said, well, I don't usually shoot people in the back. I said, I think that's the character. And he was very self-conscious about that. He didn't know that people would accept him as a character actor because he was such a leading man for so many years. It was a great experience. Wonderful.
Meanwhile, I mean, Paul Newman excelled at playing those rambunctious characters, especially later on in his career. I think he even talked to. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. The New Centurions. You mentioned it, and I love that movie as well. And I'm curious about what kind of preparation you put into it. Did you spend a lot of time with patrol officers in that?
We were obligated to by Joe Wambaugh. He said, I'm not going to make the movie unless the actors go to the police academy for 2 weeks as part of the research. So we literally, we became rookies. We were cops. We went through the training. It was rigorous, let me tell you. It was something. But it gave us a great appreciation. See, I don't think that actors do that today as much as we did in those days. That kind of research. I mean, actors who take the initiative themselves to do those things, but I don't think it's not part of them.
Yeah, it's not encouraged.
Huh?
It's not encouraged like it used to be.
It's not, and it's not mandated. I mean, our movie schedules now, they're like 28 days. You're going to make a movie, and unless it's a big Marvel action movie, and the studio or the money, the people are putting, they don't see the need, or they don't want to spend the extra money for that kind of research.
Mm.
So,
when you do that kind of research, like with the New Centurions, how does it ultimately inform your performance?
Well, it just seeps in. It's like osmosis, just by virtue of that. And we had to go out in the patrol cars at night and go into Watts and go into these areas where the hatred, the look in people's eyes, you just experience, the antipathy that cops have to go through all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly in that during those days. I mean, this was before Rodney King, so but it was still bad. It was still not, cops were still feared rather than respected, and they were feared, particularly in those parts of the world. I remember one time we had to go into an apartment in a really bad part of town and found a dead body. This character, his head was wrapped in a bedpost, in a wire, in a wrought iron bedpost. He was sticking. Oh, it was just awful. And the cops had to, undo his body. And I thought to myself, wow. I had a lot of my respect for what policemen have to go through went sky high. That was then. Today, that attitude towards police has changed. I mean, like even today, this terrible situation in Texas with this cop killing this woman, just awful. It's a different world we live in.
Yeah.
Police, police brutality was not an issue during the New Centurions.
When you play someone of a certain occupation like that, and you become close to the representatives of that occupation that you're researching with,
right?
Louis Gossett Jr. told me that he found a great. He felt obligated to do justice to his military characters because he had great reverence for them and he wanted to do honor by them. And do you feel a similar kind of duty?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's your responsibility. I often get asked about playing bad guys. I think it's very dangerous for actors to make value judgments of the characters that they're playing. In other words, to get past moral, judgment on the character, like Iago, for example. One of the most evil human beings of all time. And there's not a single redeeming value in his character. Nothing. He's a total sociopath. And yet, he's one of the most fascinating, interesting characters. I've never played him. One of my great regrets, I never got a chance to play it. For playing the character, you have to play the character fully, and even if he's a serial rapist, the question is, how do you make a serial rapist who does terrible things to children? Let's say, how do you make him interesting or let's take The Killer Inside Me, for instance, which I think is a good example of that. How do you make that character recognizably human? That's a wonderful question, and it's a wonderful character. His history with his mother, witnessing his mother having having an affair with this man and getting beaten by her. In other words, his twisted mind was not necessarily, it was the product of something in his past. And if an audience understands that, if they understand where a person is, what the motive is, or what the lack of motive is, it's about understanding. It's about, if you understand it, then you can feel. I don't think you can feel for something unless you understand it emotionally.
I just had one more question about the New Centaurians, and that was working alongside George C. Scott, who is one of the most volcanic presences in movie history, I think. What was that experience like for you?
Oh, it's fantastic. It was just great. I learned so much from him. Particularly, and he was this was very early on. It was about the time that I was just beginning to overcome my self-consciousness in front of the camera, and he was the one that really pushed me over the line completely. Right? Because he didn't apologize for big emotions. He just expressed them fully and truthfully. Directors who came along and said, "Oh no, it's much too big for the camera." That was, that got people. It gets you thinking in the wrong direction. You become very self-conscious. It happened to me. I certainly did. I went through a whole period after I went to see the rushes of The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, which was my first film, and I hated looking at myself. I thought, "Oh, I'm so big. It's terrible. I can't." So I started doing nothing in front of it. Not expressing any kind of, not over, because I didn't want to see myself overacting. Well, it was wrong. It was wrong. That was just as bad as overacting, underacting, whatever. I don't know. So just forget about it and play the scene. That took me a while to get to that point. It took me a while.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the Long Riders, because this is something that you and your brother, I believe, developed.
Right.
And then you handed it to Walter Hill to direct. And I'm curious, it must feel so close to you and your brother.
Yes.
Was it difficult to have it be directed by someone else without feeling like getting involved in the actual structure of it, the direction of it?
Well, yes, to a certain extent it was. But Walter, we had great love and respect for Walter because of his experience with, particularly his relationship with Sam Peckinpah.
Mm.
Yeah. He seemed to be the right guy for that movie. And
he really was. Yeah.
He really was. Yeah. Yeah. It was a terrific experience working with Walter. He made my brother and I, he embraced us and he protected, our ideas. In our original script, we wanted to take the last moment when Jesse's hanging a picture on the wall and Ford boys get the drop on him. That at that moment, Frank would come in and have the drop on the Ford boys, and they made a deal that they would go off and Jesse would go off to live in obscurity, and the Ford boys could take credit for killing Jesse James, and they'd get another body and stick it in there. It was a novel idea, but the idea of brothers playing brothers was enough. That was, when Walter very wise said it'd be too much to take the story in that direction. But even though my brother and I still, to this day, would love to see a sequel with that concept, and Jesse would go off to live in obscurity for a while, and Frank would go to jail with Cole Younger. Then they'd come out and they would actually ride together in Teddy Roosevelt's Wild West show.
Mm. Still, that must have been a remarkable set, because everyone is surrounded by family.
Yeah, that's right. It was. Oh, it was a great set. It was great.
What was the impetus for you and your brother writing that?
Well, what happened? We were doing about 8 or 9 years prior to that. first thing my brother ever did was we did The Wright Brothers. It was a film for television, for PBS. And it was called Orville and Wilbur. And we did The Wright Brothers. And we just as a joke, after we had a good time working together, it was the first time we'd worked together. So, well, we've done The Wright Brothers, now let's do The Wrong Brothers. And it was just like a pun on the, but we started thinking about it. So wait a minute, maybe what about the James Younger guys? So that was the beginning of it. It started as a theatrical piece, a musical, actually a stage musical. We actually did it down at the Bowery Lane. It was called The Bandit Kings. And we then came out to Hollywood and started writing a script and submitted it to everybody. In fact, George Hill actually saw it at one point. I was living in Malibu, and he lived very close by. But he didn't like the idea of brothers playing brothers. He said, you don't need to do that. So, but we were committed to that concept. We thought that was really the way to do it.
I think it really lends an authenticity to the film and to those relationships, and it's like something for an audience to savor as well.
I agree.
Yeah. I just have a couple more questions for you, and one more movie I want to ask you about, which is Road Games, which is a smashingly effective thriller, I think.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. I'm so glad you like it. One of my favorite films, too. I mean, I love working with Jamie Lee. And Richard Franklin, what an interesting director he was. He knew every single frame of every single Alfred Hitchcock movie. He would sit down at lunch, he would talk about, and he went to SC Film School, but he was a total Alfred Hitchcock fanatic. And his movies and reflected that. I mean, Road Games has a touch of that feeling, I think, of a Hitchcockian kind of thriller.
Absolutely, yeah. Did you travel? I mean, did you really travel a great distance through the Australian outback for that movie?
We traveled right across the Nullarbor Plain. No trees. And oh my God, what an experience! She was living in gas station motels, saltwater showers.
Acting is such a remarkable life because in your career you've lived 100 lives.
That's for sure. Oh, I really have. I've been blessed. It's hard for me to keep up with myself.
Well, I want to ask about some of the stage work as well. Two topics in particular. When you're assuming a Shakespearean role, many of these roles have been done by some of the most legendary acting talents throughout history. I mean, there's a great legacy of great Shakespearean performances.
Right.
Do you feel? Is that daunting?
Yes, it is. It is daunting, and also it's challenging, and it makes you you want to be a part of that legacy. I mean, I did. I wanted to be a part of that. My hero was Laurence Olivier. He was my god when I was a young actor. He played so many wonderful Shakespearean roles that many other wonderful British, particularly, actors played, that you began to see that there was no definitive performance. It's what's definitive is what you bring to the role that nobody else has. What makes your Hamlet different than or your Lear or your Richard III different than others? What's unique about? What gives you the right to be part of this legacy?
Sure.
These questions, and And it provides a challenge, but it's also an inspiration to find your way through the labyrinth of possibilities, of choices, alternative choices that you can make when you're doing To Be or Not to Be, or Blow Winds and Crack Your Cheeks, or Now Is the Winter of Our Discontent. And what is it you're going to do that's different? That's what I always ask myself. And sometimes it took me, I played Hamlet 3 times, right? And I don't know if I ever got it right. I mean, finally I came to the conclusion, you don't play Hamlet. Hamlet plays you.
Mm.
You know.
And these were different, distinctly different stages of your life when you played him?
It was all pretty much in the same 3-year period. Yeah,
okay.
It was 70s. Yeah.
So is the key personalizing it in some way?
For sure. Personalizing it, and also finding the humor. The humor is important. The humor to me is the most. It's the way you get into somebody's. It's the fun. If you can laugh at somebody's witticism or even a platform, I mean, you begin to identify with that person.
Mm.
So I'm always looking. I look for the humor in Hamlet, and also, even with the Scottish King. I mean, trying to find the humor in that guy. That's the real challenge. Oh yeah.
It's interesting though. If you can find your footing in Shakespeare, then I think you have a leg up, because
yes.
He is the father of all drama. And there's a reason, right. Even dramas that are made today, people refer to them as Shakespearean. Right. I mean, that's where it all starts.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Well said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the process now of doing a one-man Hemingway, which wow. I'm hoping to do. I did it in Chicago very successfully, and we're looking for a theater in Washington, D.C., and also here in Los Angeles and New York and London. And so it's a one-man Hemingway piece called Pamplona. And I'm very excited about that.
Is it, who are you, the writer? Who wrote it?
Jim McGrath, the writer that I met on television series in My Camera, and he's a very good writer. And we worked on it for some time together. And it really it's about his just having received the Nobel Prize, and he's been given this assignment to write a piece for Life magazine on the 2 greatest matadors in the world, Antonio Ordóñez and Miguel de Medellín. And he's in a hotel room in Pamplona, all alone, and he's got writer's block. He can't write. And we've just heard him receive the Nobel Prize. He just received it. And he's got a block. And the only way he can unblock himself is to revisit the demons of his past. And the hotel walls become screened, and you see images of Hadley and his wives and Scott Fitzgerald and his mother and his father. I love doing it.
So when you're doing a one-act play where you essentially own the stage,
yeah,
do you consider your audience your acting partner?
Yes. Very good. Yes. Very good. Absolutely. Yeah, they are my confidants. Yeah, and that's true. You see, that starts with Shakespeare too. The aside, the monologue, Richard III. Taking the audience into your confidence. The audience becomes your compatriot. Yeah, and very well said. Very well thought out. I've enjoyed this.
I have too. I got to tell you, it's such a deep honor to speak to you, and I just got to tell you, my mother also wants me to tell you that she loves you.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Thank you so much for your generosity. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, thank you.